Thank you very much, Will and Lou, and of course Richard, the director. Where else would you get a performance involving technology, Kendal mint cake and Shepton mallet? It's my great pleasure now to introduce our guest speaker for this evening, Andy Dean from IBM, and he's going to be talking to us about emerging technologies. In his role at IBM, Andy has focused on the next generation of the web, including hot topics such as social media, the real-time web, and the mobile web, some of which you've heard this evening from some of the experts on the screen. At the heart of Andy's work is a belief that technology can enable businesses to hold better conversations with their customers in a widening range of manners and venues. Andy gets to play with technology as well all day long, whilst permanently attached to his Apple MacBook, wearing his ever-present hoodie and Adidas trainers of choice. Ladies and gentlemen, Andy Dean from IBM.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And just for you today, I've dressed up. And we wear my hoodie, but I, for Christmas, got a special smart jumper for my wife. It's my special smart jumper, but I do have my trainers on. And just to get your sympathy for having to follow that absolutely wonderful performance, which is really, really very hard to follow. My trainer got a new hole in the bottom today, because I stood on a nail whilst doing something I should have been doing earlier on. So if you wonder why I'm limping, it's because my foot is rather painful. So I try not to fall over. In terms of following that performance, what I really want to do is just reflect back on what we heard about and give us sort of a feel from where I see things going, what's changing, and why is this ever so important as we look to the future of our businesses, as we look to how we work with our customers. And my starting point for 10 is this isn't really about the technology. As we heard at the start of the performance, if you hark back to the days as they used to be, it's about relationships, it's about conversations, it's about having, that sort of people-centric type view of the world. All that's happened is that technology has enabled us to do that in new and interesting ways. So our expectations have changed, but ultimately this is about people. And people are much more interested in the computers. So, my real message here is think about how you want to do things with your customers. Think about how your customers might have changed and do it. The technology ultimately is the easy part. There are people who can help you. At the end of the day, the real inspiration comes about thinking about how you can do something differently. But there are some changes going on which are driving some of those things about why people work and react in different ways. From a technology standpoint, there's been this term called Web 2 being used for the last couple of years. I don't want to talk about Web 2 in any particular depth. There are a couple of often used quotes here, but there's a very important word in both those quotes, and that's the word participation. What has changed on the web is it's gone from being a place where you published your page and the occasional person came and read it. So it's gone from being a world of a read-only environment for most of us. We used to go and read stuff, and that was it. To a place of participation. It's a two-way thing now. We expect to be able to give comment. We expect to be able to, have conversation, to take part in the web in a much bigger way than we used to do. Also, there's this interesting change ahead of us, this change in the road, this thing called Generation Y. So to talk about that Generation Y, up the top here we have a sort of a chart showing you, the different generations. I'm steadfastly in Generation X. I'm not sure where you fall on this generation line. But there's this interesting thing ahead of us. So, there's this big group of people called Generation Y. Biggest generation since the baby boomers, 3 times bigger than my generation. And they're going to change the world. They already are. They're changing all of us. Because they have a different set of expectations to how it was in the past. Generation Y, I think, have grown up as being digital natives. They can't imagine life without all these technologies, without these different ways to interact with each other, different ways to interact with businesses. They don't view TV as king. As we heard, when it comes to new media, people don't want things on TV anymore. TV is shouting at you. It's a traditional way that you sit down and you listen. But we don't listen now. What happens is that you take TV on demand. You skip the adverts. You choose your life and break it up into different chunks. You listen to your music, you're on the web, you're watching a bit of, Sky Plus or iPlayer, because people ultimately want to do this when they feel it fits into their life. So we just have this core idea that people listen much more now to what their friends and peers say than what traditional advertising says. So this key message about actually participating in people's lives, letting them have this conversation with you, becomes increasingly important because, I'm not going to listen to you because you're advertising in a traditional way. I'm going to listen to you because I feel I've got a relationship with you. I'm going to listen to my friends because I've got a relationship with them. And ultimately they have an influence on what I choose. And finally, this point we heard about, flexible and mobile working. In terms of the way that people work in the future, we expect employees to be very flexible with a modern culture. I'm forever scared when I hear companies saying, we don't allow our employees to take part on Facebook or LinkedIn because we don't trust them to be sensible people. We don't trust them to be doing the right thing and taking advantage of these modern ways of working. And then increasingly as Generation Y become the workforce, become the people with the money in their pockets, you've got to realise that if you don't step up to their expectations in terms of how they live their lives, they won't want to work for you, they won't want to buy stuff from you. Just to sort of give some data behind this, it's very interesting to look as we look forward in terms of what people are doing out there. So we heard about the huge number of videos viewed on YouTube. If you look on this graph here, you can see that top blue line shows that over 80% of regular internet users have watched online clips. So everybody is doing this. If you look at the green line in the middle, that's the number of people who signed up to create a profile on a social networking site. Again, it's almost 60% across the broad spectrum of people, but if you consider Generation Y, it's 96% of people in Generation Y. So, everybody is doing this, and if you're not, then you're not on this graph, and people are not going to listen and are not going to have that conversation with you. And so ultimately, this is what I call the me experience. What I'm really saying here is that we're all very different. We all have different expectations. And the key is that we're all expecting that to be about just me, in the sense that, I have some expectations. If you can't meet those, I won't buy from you. Likewise, the other person next to you have a different set of expectations. We're all much more now about being treated as individuals, having a relationship which is individual. The mass market has gone. Don't sell to me as just a faceless person. Sell to me as Andy because I'm a bit different to everyone else. In this case here, just to prove how maybe slightly different I am, this picture shows me in an abandoned lecture theatre in a derelict building. And later on you'll see where I got the nail in my foot because it was another derelict building I wasn't supposed to be in. But, the key thing is that, let's have this relationship in lots of different ways. Let's think about how this can change. And I've got 4 themes I want to dig a bit more into. The idea of richness, the idea of the social relationship, the idea of a diverse relationship, and the idea that happens everywhere. So this first idea, this idea of richness. And at the heart of this is the idea that you're really only bounded by your imagination when it comes to how you can present information, how you can present an experience to people. You can make it compelling, you can make it something they want to tell their friends about, you can tell it something which involves their friends, you can do a really rich approach so your traditional static web page just isn't the way it's going to be in the future. And I want to give a couple of examples actually for real here.